And you know what May is for? Outdoor fucking. That is the month outdoor fucking starts.
Nice.
You gonna say?
I hope
You gonna
that
say anything?
that got picked up because you started right when we started. So I hope that all got recorded. The first Sunday, the month of May, May the month of fucking outdoors, outdoor
Yep,
fucking.
pretty
Okay.
much. Outdoor fucking starts today, the first Sunday of May. You could have done it the first Saturday, but then you'd have missed the Kentucky Derby. That's a joke.
Mm.
I
Hmm.
did miss the Kentucky Derby, but I knew it was. I knew it was yesterday.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I missed it for the 34th time, I guess.
Well, it is a pretty cruel sport.
Uh-huh.
The sport of kings, horse racing.
Hmm.
That's what it's called. The sport of kings. Like polo.
Yeah. I don't buy it.
A lot of money. Hmm?
Here, yeah, it's not my thing. Same as golfing, not my thing.
See, I would. I like to. I actually like to golf, but see, if you actually golf, like at a golf course in Scotland, they're nothing like the golf courses here. It's pretty. They don't take care of them. We like manicure them. You know what I mean? Like our golf courses here are like special.
They
Don't you
take
ever
up too much
wonder
water, too much land in this country, for sure.
in that? But don't you ever wonder, like, okay, the country who started it,
Mhm.
Scotland,
Mhm.
how come they don't have the Masters there?
Hmm.
How
Good
come they
question.
don't have like the PGA Tour Classic head there? They ain't even on the fucking PGA, as far as I know.
I
I mean,
don't know.
that's how much I know about it too, but I don't
Uh-huh.
think so because I've asked people
Mhm.
because they're so rough. I've been told by people who have golfed in Scotland, like you golf in Scotland, it's you know you're taking your life into your own hands. The woods you're going through. That's a joke, but it's pretty. It's not
Huh.
fun. It's not like a pleasant walk, and like here,
Because
here's
of
just like a pleasant walk.
the nature, like the animals, or like what is it?
Well, part of it is Scotland's pretty. Haven't you ever looked at all those moors and heather and all that stuff? It's pretty. It's pretty rugged country. That's why they never really beat them, the Scots,
Mhm.
physically because the terrain was so harsh and
Hmm.
very cold. And so it's just a whole different thing. You couldn't grow like the grass that we grow for our
Golf courses.
golf courses, right? In Scotland, they wouldn't grow.
Hmm.
They die. They aren't hardy enough. Them Scots, they're pretty hardy. And
Yeah,
that ain't
really.
no they are.
I mean, you can pretty much grow anything in America. We're pretty lucky like that, I guess.
Well, because we've done that. But now people are worried about their beef getting taken away by bite. But really, you should be much more worried about your potato chips and corn because Mother Nature's taken those away.
Hmm.
And
Okay.
guess you know that very political channel that I listen to on that,
The Weather Channel.
the Weather Channel.
Uh huh.
The very political channel I listen to about that stuff, the Weather Channel.
Yeah. That we're running out of corn, or it's gonna
That
collapse.
the climate is changing to the point where we will no longer be able to, which in some ways is a very bad thing because corn, although it takes an enormous amount of water,
Mhm.
does do a lot of feeding.
Mhm.
I mean, none of the grains really give you a lot of stuff, a lot of nutrients, You know what I mean? They just
Hmm.
don't. But anyways, on on
Well,
that
let's
note, we'll
speaking
try
of
to nurture your soul. Let's
agriculture, one cash crop that America's been famous for was cotton.
Gotten?
Hmm. And you proposed we talk about the 13th Amendment more today because we just glossed over it or sort of
Yeah,
touched on it
we will
last time.
not. I have not done my homework. I had not done my homework on history on that one. Okay, and not on a lot of the amendments because I I will tell you they're just there and I don't really think about them. I just
Well, there's a
now
lot.
that we're doing this show about it,
Uh-huh.
there's a lot more complicated to that. They're there and that's it. So since we delved into the 13th,
Hmm.
and it's such an important one
Hmm.
that I felt that I had, not been a very good host because I didn't know my history of it. So I wanted to, correct that.
Read
So
up
that's
more on
what
it.
I was.
See you read up. Shall we read Article 5 again first?
We sure,
Do
of
you have
course,
yours?
I do. So here you
Okay.
go, folks. The Congress, such as it be, whenever 2/3 of both houses shall deem it necessary, if only they would more, shall propose amendments to the Constitution. Hallelujah. Or on the application of the legislation of 2/3 of the several states, in this case 50, shall call a convention for proposing amendments. Hallelujah. Which in either case shall be valid to all intents and purposes as part of this Constitution when ratified by the legislators of 3/4 of the several states, which is now 50, or by conventions in 3/4 thereof, as the one or the other mode of ratification shall be proposed by the Congress. That's the part I probably understand the least. Provided that no amendment which may be made prior to the year 1808 shall in any manner affect the first and fourth clauses in the ninth section of the first article, and that no state without its consent shall be deprived of its equal suffrage in the Senate. Which I wish this part could actually just be dropped off because it's no longer relevant. There, I've read the Article 5 of the Constitution.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, I think that part that you said blah, 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 as one or the other mode of ratification may be proposed by the Congress.
That, yes,
The one
that.
thing I heard was that uh, the legislation would be ratified by the state legislatures. Like
Say that again. Say the.
the two methods that Congress can propose can either be the state legislatures ratifying or conventions ratifying. And Congress can propose that, but I guess because the Constitution here in Article 5 lists the state legislatures first, that's kind of the default, just because it's in order of first, or at least it has been the default in the past, and the other amendments that have been ratified have all been ratified by the state legislatures. Because like we know that all those amendments
So
have.
this is how
Mhm.
that. Congress holds on to its power of the state legislators.
Because what are you saying? Because they would threaten
Because,
that they would have conventions ratify instead of legislatures.
well, that is sort of the deal, right? I mean, they don't need the
The
state
state.
legislators. We need
Mm-hmm.
the state legislators
Mm-hmm.
to get an Article 5 convention called.
Right.
Not we're not talking about the ratification, ladies and gentlemen.
Good
That's a
point.
separate pot.
I mean, you're. I guess what you're saying, but it seems like Congress would never call for conventions in the states, like unless there is something crazy going on. I don't see why they would ever want. I mean, unless they thought somehow that they could control the conventions in the states to pass an amendment that the state legislatures wouldn't vote for. I don't see why they would do that though.
Well,
Or
you
I
see,
don't see
once
how they
again,
could think that they could control conventions and who would be doing
well,
the
that's
control. I don't know. I don't see that as really
I'm
being.
not saying that. I just think
Hmm.
that it's very interesting that Congress was given two ways to call for ratification.
Right. Hmm. Yeah, Congress has more power in some senses.
But and that would be uh that would be the only thing, right? That what was I going to say on that thought about that.
That it
Well,
could.
okay, there were two things on that.
Hmm.
One was once again Congress or the Constitution tells us, or by conventions, which it never defines. Okay, it uses it twice in the same
Hmm.
article, but in
Right.
neither one does it can. Because to me, a convention could be, I don't know, a convention of one. Who says what a convention is? I have never quite understood this. So, and according to everything that I've heard about the Article 5 being, if a convention were called under it,
Hmm.
there is no set guidance. There's no rules and regs into how many people are in the convention, how the people who get into the convention get there by
Hmm.
election, by uh,
Appointment by whom? By the state
appointment, by
legislatures. Who knows? Uh.
elected by the public. I don't
Hmm.
know. I mean, see, that was, I mean, that's where that I think that that has more of a historical context that I would like to look up of what they have of these ideas at our convention.
That's a good point. I mean, I, I think it's there mostly as a threat, and as we know, that threat has never been made good on. No one, they've never called a convention because Congress always steps in. Um,
In
but
both ways.
well, Congress steps in and proposes the amendment, and then once
Right.
in the past when amendments have been proposed, they've always gone to the state legislatures for ratification.
Right.
Yeah. So, but it's conceivable. Yeah, if Congress didn't like the amendment, if say 2/3 of the states proposed an amendment, Congress would be forced to call for a convention. If Congress didn't like it and they didn't like that their power was being sidestepped with a convention, they could demand that the state legislatures be sidestepped with ratification conventions in each state. So Congress, so that's actually just another like another check. Like there's a check and balance. There's the big check and balance of Article 5 that states can call a convention, but there's also that secondary check of Congress to check the state legislatures in the amendment process. So I don't necessarily see that as a bad thing that Congress has that power, you know.
Well, and going into that, that would have been a situation where that for the 13th Amendment, because we've just fought a civil war, right?
Mm-hmm.
Over states' rights about being able to own someone else.
Right.
Okay, however you want to put it, that was the state rights they were fighting about.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that they didn't get that state right, considering all the other states' rights we have lost, give me a break. That one is disgusting.
Well, okay. So now
Anyway,
I'm curious what you learned about the 13th Amendment, because that's interesting. Because how was it ratified? How many states ratified it? In what order? Did they need Southern states to ratify it, or could they force the
yes.
Southern states to ratify it because they
Well,
won the war? The Union did, or what?
okay. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what, okay. And see, that's the thing. Had the state legislators of the southern states were who were the Democrats,
Mm-hmm.
um, were um, that's where that Congress could have sidestepped them and said, if you don't ratify this, then we'll call a convention.
Mm-hmm.
Because then people that had just been freed, who were not the DNA that some of the people in the South liked at all. Not that many in the North did either, but the idea that you could call a convention and those people would have the right to vote on that amendment.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, what blackmail that was.
But weren't they not uh, able to vote until after the
Right, but a
amendment was
convention doesn't
passed?
but a convention is not an election. So you could pick people
Mm-hmm.
to be at the convention that would vote for it. And you asked me how you would know? Well, I think we know how we would know by our eyes.
Hmm.
If you catch me, right? What I'm saying. So then the Congress would have said to the states, then you have to have conventions. And your convention will be filled with nothing but people that don't look like you.
Okay, I guess so. So walk me through it. How did it go down?
Well, it went down that, but I don't know that that happened because nobody's talking about that. But that could have
Mm-hmm.
happened because it did say, okay, in, okay, here we go. It's that we're still at war in January 1863. Now, in April of 1864, the Senate, responding in part to an active abolitionist petition campaign, passed the 13th Amendment to abolish slavery in the United States. Oppositions from Democrats. How do you still have Democrats in the House of Representatives if the South is gone? I would love to know what that Congress was made up of. Prevented the amendment from receiving the required two-thirds majority, and the bill
Hmm.
failed. Okay, so in April of 1864, while we are still in the midst of the Civil War, the Senate says we got to do this. We got to abolish slavery.
Mm-hmm.
And the House of Representatives is the one who kills that amendment, and it does it with opposition from Democrats.
Okay.
Wow. Okay.
Well, yeah, of
Following his
course. I mean, because Democrats were the
but there
South.
are no southern states who have any elected officials in the Congress anymore. When they
Oh,
seceded. That's what I'm
okay.
trying to figure out here.
So,
Unless
okay.
there's something I don't know. Because they did set up their that's what Jefferson Davis did. They set up their own government.
Mm-hmm. So all the like delegates left, or not delegates, but representatives and senators left
I
Washington,
thought that they
basically.
did or
Uh huh.
got I'd have to check, but somewhere in my mind, in some documentary, they got
Mhm.
kind of expelled, or
Mhm. Well, sure. Yeah. I mean.
although they couldn't have, well, maybe they, well, I mean, because the first Johnson,
Mhm.
the first Johnson who was Abraham Lincoln's vice president, he did not believe in secession, but he believed in slavery.
Mhm.
And he was somehow still, I believe, in the Congress. So I don't know what, we'll have to study that, but that makes this very clear about how things kind of went down that are shady or shaky or real unclear. Okay, following his re-election in 1864, November, he decided that he wanted to have that amendment done. So he persuaded 8 House Democrats to switch their votes and encouraged several other representatives who had missed the previous vote to support the amendment, which was finally passed on January 31st, 1865. Now, I'm thinking we are real close to the end of the Civil War here.
Mhm.
But it gets ratified by December of 1865, with Georgia becoming the 27th state to approve it out of the then total 36 states.
Okay.
Uh, Iowa was the 31st state. They're still racist. Voting for ratification in January 15, 1866. Maybe they weren't a state. No, they were a state. They were a state. They are racist. That's
1866. So after the war. Um.
well, no. Actually, it was
Right.
done in 1865.
Was when it was ratified.
I think. Yeah, December 6th, 1865. So it got done quick.
Okay.
It got done in 11 months,
And now let's see.
10
And when did
months.
the war? Like when did the war officially end?
Okay, I'm supposed to just pull that out of my
I thought you
what?
just said it. Sorry. Because
I didn't. It's okay. I said no, it was after. I know it ended in 65. Okay.
right.
That
So
much I
it
do know.
okay.
Okay. So I was saying the Civil War must have ended somewhere in between that
Right.
time.
In between the proposal and the ratification. Okay, so I
Yeah.
guess according to Google, it officially ended April 9th, 1865.
Okay. So they saw it coming. That's when I said I thought in January they saw the end of the war coming. Do you know what I
Mhm.
mean? The South knew that they were not going to make it
Mhm.
because they were getting, that was when Sherman was, when they were just getting burnt to the
Mhm.
ground all over. I mean, not just in Georgia. They did a lot of that, and they just, and when I say burned to the ground, I don't necessarily mean that they burned. They did burn. Um, they were doing a scorched earth
Mhm.
in the South. Every northern regiment, basically commander, was told that it was now or never.
Mhm.
And that's when I think that was the push in January to really start that and get it done. And in those 4 months, and that's the time when there isn't anything really to take anyway. So they were taking all the food they could get, and people were starving
Mhm.
because there was no food because it's winter, even in the South. You don't grow a lot of food in to eat. And they're taking the hams and everything that's been smoked and salted and
Mhm.
all the livestock and everything that they can. They're just taking it. They just come in, and if you don't let them, they just, and there's only women really there left. Women, old men, children, and slaves,
Mhm.
ex-slaves, however you want to. A lot of them weren't even there. A lot of the slaves by that time in a lot of the South had already just run away
Mhm.
because they knew that it was coming so close, and who was going to stop them as long as they could run north.
Right.
because
Um,
the North was coming to them, and a lot of them met up with them. Those are things I do know about it.
mhm.
But anyway, so yeah, that's so. In the midst, my question is who the hell was the state legislators of Georgia?
Yeah, that ratified the amendment.
In December 6th, 1865. That's a quick turnaround
Yeah. So was that
to all of us.
was
I
that
mean,
the
I'd have to really go ahead.
last was that the last state needed to get to the 3/4, or was Iowa
No, it wasn't. It just says that Iowa then decided to do it, you know, but they
after
were the 35th.
superfluously?
So
Okay.
four had already done it. So
Even
it's a,
though,
and it, go ahead.
wait, they only needed 34 to ratify?
No, they only needed 27
20, okay, 27. Okay, yeah, I was going to
because
say
they
that sounds like
only
too many.
had like 34.
States. Okay, they had 34 states. I heard 34 and okay. Yeah, so
Yes, yes.
27.
And
So,
there are a lot of numbers in
uh-huh.
there. Go
Yeah, they're
ahead.
always, yeah. And so Georgia was the last one to make it official.
Hmm.
Okay.
And I went to go see who ratified them, and I didn't really get that. And I would like to. I know you went to that spot. I should have you send me that link where you found all the amendments and who ratified them and when they got ratified and stuff.
Mhm.
But that was
I could pull that up again quickly too. That was just Wikipedia.
okay.
Let's see.
Became permanently free and slavery was abolished in the United States. Yeah, right. One form, one form of slavery. At least I can't, whip you to death in front of everybody else.
Mhm.
I mean, thank the goddess for that. But I mean, what's
Okay.
that? What is that? What is that? A step above what? I mean, it's like, give me a break. Give me strength.
Let's see.
So anyway, on that
Mhm.
note, did you get it? Because if you didn't, go ahead.
No, I'm looking here. I
Anyway,
mean, what did we want to know? Because I'm looking here at the list of amendments and when they were ratified.
well, it'd be interesting to know what states ratified
The 13th.
that.
Okay.
Okay, because they,
Let's look here. Uh, Proposal and ratification. Ratification by the states. Okay, yeah. The 27th was Georgia, December 6th, 1865. So going down the list, the first was Illinois, Lincoln's home state, February 1st, 1865. So from February to December, that's all it. I mean, it took less than a year, but
yeah,
almost a year. Um, Rhode Island was the next day, February 2nd. Michigan, February 3rd. Maryland, New York, Pennsylvania, West Virginia were also February 3rd. Um, Missouri, February
see, West
6th.
Virginia used to be so not racist.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they used to be no. Yeah,
Were
it's
they
a long
actually
story.
like,
Go ahead.
were they in the Northern Union?
They were, and that's why they're West Virginia. They separated from the Virginia that seceded from the United States,
Oh.
and they said we're not going to do that. But then they didn't have slaves. They were slaves. They were coal mining probably then.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know. How do you hate somebody that really does look like you? That was sort of the joke about the mines.
Right.
When the black, when people freed slaves went to Britain, a lot of them did go to Wales. Why? Because they were miners, and underground nobody cares
Mm-hmm.
because y'all look the same.
Hmm.
There you go. Sorry, just a phrase.
You're canceled. Just kidding.
What? I'm canceled because of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm sure that's a coal miner saying. Well, yeah, so there you go. I mean, Georgia finished it off. December 6th, 1865. Took less than a year. Um, I mean,
So were there any other southern states that did it?
oh yeah. Let's see. Virginia. Virginia was
Okay.
after West Virginia. They were the 12th one to do it. Um, Kansas, Indiana. Oh, Louisiana was the 16th to do it.
Kansas is a big thing because you know
Uh,
Kansas was where the war really kind of started, even though
uh,
it wasn't declared.
I,
It's
I
where a
didn't
lot
really
of
know
murdering took place.
that. Let's see. I said Louisiana, also Tennessee and Arkansas were both on April 7th and April 14th. South Carolina.
This is right. That's the day after the Civil War
Uh
ends.
huh. Uh huh. Good observation.
Okay, how did that happen? I would really like to know the logistics of
How did
how that
they
actually
how did they know that it happened the next day?
well or
Word travels
no
fast.
that
I don't know.
okay okay you've separated your country.
Mhm.
You have two governments. One day you had two governments. The next day you have one government.
Mhm.
Okay. So does that mean that any of them maybe that's why Virginia only could ratify it on April 6th?
I mean, I'm guessing when Congress proposed the amendment, they must have set out like, yeah, now that we're proposing this, we're calling on the southern states to ratify it with us, or something. And like you said, they must have known that it was coming. They probably knew long before it was really over that it was over. So like it might have just been a coincidence that they ratified it, right after the official time of surrender.
Well, yeah, because actually, Sherman's March to the Sea was earlier than that. It wasn't
Hmm.
in that. I don't think it was in the last 4 months. I think he occupied Atlanta the in the winter of 1864. The
Mm.
winter of 18. No, 65. January, February, March, April.
Hmm.
So that might have been part of it that it was under the Union control, I think, by
Uh-huh.
then. I'd have to check. But I'm pretty sure that because there was a good portion of the South that was occupied by that time,
Hmm. And maybe they were
or it
just
was on
they were
its
just
way to.
implanting state legislators into power, like getting probably
Well, see,
arresting
that's the
the
whole thing is how did those people all of a sudden get elected? I mean, I'd really like to actually know the details
yeah.
of all of that because we're supposed to be in a civil war and the next day they're being able to ratify an
Hmm.
amendment. It just kind of blows my mind.
I mean, I think back then they just had to think ahead. You send your army down, and you probably have orders to like you know install new legislators, a new government, and with explicit instructions to ratify this amendment. Like when you go, make sure you get this done.
Well, see, but then there that lies, which is that if he did that, he didn't. Those legislators weren't elected by the people of those
Well, the people had
states.
just because the people had just tried to secede. You know, or the voters, I guess, had just tried to secede. Maybe not the quote the people, but um, I don't know.
Or the state legislators that had been in power were the
Uh huh.
ones who had seceded.
Right.
In the
Exactly.
I mean, we're talking about Georgia and the South and all of that right now. And so, yeah, that's what I'm sort of saying is wow. So basically, we got the 13th passed because, but even then, why wouldn't you just call for a convention? You don't need the state legislators. Call for a convention, put a certain
maybe
certain
they
people in the convention
maybe they
that'll
did.
that'll vote on if they'll ratify that they get to vote in elections.
Or no, actually, it says having been ratified by the legislatures of 3/4 of the states. So it was it was the state legislatures. And so
Yeah.
after I said Tennessee and Arkansas, then Connecticut, New Hampshire, then and oh, okay, yeah. So then it was after Tennessee and Arkansas in April, then Connecticut May 4th, New Hampshire July 1st, and so that was July. Then there's nothing until November 13th. So July, August, September, October, no movement. Then South Carolina was on November 13th. Then Alabama, December 2nd. North Carolina, December 4th, and Georgia, December 6th. So those were really the last three holdouts: South Carolina, Alabama, North Carolina, and Georgia. The last four holdouts. Um, so those,
Well, and of
yeah,
course, the occupying Union Army wasn't gone by 1865,
uh huh. So
although it
they,
was probably sort of because I think, we know that I can't remember the date, but he got killed shortly after peace was declared, assassinated.
mm-hmm,
Lincoln, right? It was like within 2 weeks, I think, after. So Johnson was in charge,
mm-hmm,
but maybe he just, I don't know. That's one I would like to see a lot more. You could probably do your thesis on it. You could probably get a doctorate on this
uh huh,
if you want it. I mean, I'm just saying, if you want it.
uh
That's a
huh.
pretty wild. Almost still, because they do just gloss over it. Everybody glosses over it. We just accept it that this just happened. We don't really ask how this, and of course, mostly we're children when it's happening, when we're being told about our country's history, the history that it wanted to portray for itself. Okay, I will say that as well. But I mean, we're all taught some of it. We all know that there was a civil war.
Mm-hmm,
And so it's just sort of interesting that we just always accepted that, oh, well, because I think part of it is we never really understood even then as children because we weren't really told or explained to very well or enlightened, educated
mm-hmm.
on it, that the state legislators make decide what amendments go into the Constitution. I mean, they are the last ones. Like you say, they're the last check. They're the last balance, however you want to put it, on getting an amendment into the Constitution. And
Yeah.
that's after the House has done it and after the Senate has done it.
Mm-hmm,
But also, the thing about the 13th that makes it unique is that it was signed by a president, which, as you know, if you've listened to this podcast, a president does not have to sign
right.
an amendment to the Constitution. But he wanted to, so he did, to make it official. He didn't have to sign it to make it official, but he just wanted to sign it.
Um, and then after that, what came? Some more Reconstruction amendments, which I know almost nothing about. But I was
Well,
planning
yeah,
on
they're not.
watching There's a movie on Netflix I'm gonna watch. I'll watch it for next week about the 14th Amendment. I guess it's called Amend, and Will Smith I think narrates it or something. Um, and that's I guess about citizenship. But I so.
Yes, and that they can hold office
Mhm.
because because right, because they weren't born. And remember, it says that in the Constitution that you have to be born. There's a thing about a citizen. You have to be a citizen for 7 years. Remember, that's the first. Because I was wrong about the Article 1. Oh, I meant to tell you. I was wrong about Article 1. Article 1 is about the legislative. It's not about money. But right after that, it goes into money because it's Congress or whatever who deals with the money.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
you know, so
Well, that was a lot about article or about the 13th Amendment. I mean, I've definitely learned a lot just about it how the ratification process went down. I mean, there's still I think like you said that could be a whole doctorate, or it definitely could be a damn good documentary about the ratification. I think this whole thing is a good would be a great documentary just about amendments in general and like the controversial ones, the ratification process, um,
Yes.
and show like uh, whatever drawings and depictions of Reconstruction, what have you. I mean, because yeah, what really was it like in those states on the ground when they're trying to get this amendment ratified? You know, the 13th is for sure an interesting one, but also the 27th, the newest one. How did that go down in the 80s? Uh, you
Right.
know,
That's the
who
one that's 203
and three
years
years old.
it took
Yeah,
to ratify.
because each state, and that's really the lesson that I think needs to be learned is
Right.
that the ratification can be slow. It can take a long time because it can be one state after another, and there can be long gaps between them. So, and the same thing as
But
proposing.
unfortunately,
Hmm.
what happens is also they can be taken away, as we found out with the Equal Rights Amendment,
Yep,
right? That when we looked into that one, that some states have taken away their ratification of it.
exactly. So that's just another reason that any argument that it's too easy or that it could be a slippery slope and run away, quote unquote, run away the process is completely um, erroneous because it's so hard. And it takes a long time, and 34 states have to ratify, or I mean 3/4 of the states have to ratify, which would be 38 out of 50. I was talking to somebody last time, since last week. We kind of talked a little bit about opposition to Article 5 or opposition to the convention for sure. Last week, we dipped our
Or
toe into
calling
that.
a convention for an
Yeah.
amendment.
And I
Just
talked,
calling it, just to call a convention, not to get anywhere on the convention, just to call a convention, and out of that convention would come an amendment on a subject.
hmm and it's basically a, I mean, it calls for a convention, but it's also essentially a petition to Congress saying call the amendment. So, I mean,
Or right,
yeah. So,
write the amendment and
mhm,
have people vote on it,
right,
right, in Congress. We're talking, right, and get your 2/3 of your shit together.
exactly. Um,
God, they're
yeah.
a freaking mathematician. I mean, I'm glad that sort of in a way they did that, but it's just such a pain. 2/3, 3/4, 3/5, 9/10.
Yeah.
What the hell?
You just got to know how where you're at on your count, which again, if you're doing a documentary, you could have the map, show the map and
Right.
show how many states existed at that time
Time.
and show a little pie
Have a
chart,
map of the states of that time. Right.
on the side with the 2/3 and three
Hmm.
fourths.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Of the several states.
Yes.
So, so the other thing though is that since we got onto the 13th Amendment, which should have been passed much, much sooner in America
Mm-hmm.
than it was, and partly because that, as I said, or I've said to you, I don't. The South didn't have to fight that war at all. They already knew that they'd lost. Okay, and I'm going to tell you something. So what I said, and I had not read this article, ladies and gentlemen, cats and dogs, before I, I should say like fish and fish,
Huh?
trilobites or something. Nothing. I had not read this before. I was looking into it about the
Mm-hmm.
Manchester before I said that about where I. So this just cemented it, this article, because it says, and it's from the socialist website. The Confederacy wagered that British workers would rise up against the cotton famine caused by the Union blockade of southern ports, and that this, combined with the British ruling class sympathy for the South, would compel a British and French intervention against the Union.
Mm.
So what I said, that they always, that the British ruling class would have definitely sided with the South, no doubt
Mm-hmm.
about it. I've always said that, and since I've known of any of the history about it. Instead, the overwhelming opposition of British workers to slavery proved a critical factor in preventing British recognition of the Confederacy.
Wow. Solidarity.
There was a close economic relationship between British industrialism and the American South slave economy. Because by 1860, there were 2,650 cotton mills in Manchester and Lancaster, pretty much, but mostly in around Manchester. Lancaster's the region in the northern part of England.
Mm.
And they decided, this, the South decided that they weren't going to do that. I mean, the north of Britain decided that they weren't going to
Mm-hmm.
touch it anymore. They weren't going to touch
Slave grown
cotton, that
cotton.
raw cotton
Mm-hmm.
that had been picked by slaves in America. That's what
Mm-hmm.
they decided. So the interesting thing on that too was, I want to tell you this one other thing about it, because this will make
Mm-hmm.
everybody really laugh. As capitalism developed, and capitalism in Manchester was unfettered, which is why that the South thought that the North mill owners in Britain would be able to force their workers to side, because they thought they were slaves too, and they had a master, and that master was going to make them process that cotton
Mm-hmm.
in the mill. But that isn't how it worked. Even it may be close, but it's not quite. As capitalism developed and Manchester grew, so did the working class. Frederick Ingalls, Karl Marx's co thinker, wrote The Conditions of the Working Class in England, published in 1845, while working at his father's Manchester factory.
1845.
Hmm.
Okay.
And he was Karl Marx's co thinker.
Yep. Yeah. You
So
always
just
hear Marx and Engels together.
yeah. So
Okay.
that's what his daddy did.
Hmm. Interesting.
And because of that, it bothered him so much that he couldn't abide it.
Mm-hmm. And but he was
Then he,
he was far enough ahead of the curve that he had like primed Manchester workers to have that much like more class consciousness than most workers have today in the United States. I mean, I know they still have a pretty strong sense of class consciousness in Europe, I think, or definitely stronger than we have here. But I mean, yeah, if only we could have that kind of solidarity today. It's like if workers, it like goes right to the heart of today's, you know, uh, today's commerce and capitalism. How much of our stuff is made by essentially slave labor? I mean, it's not necessarily
Yes.
slave labor, but it's people working for less than 10 cents or whatever a day.
Some of them are basically like slaves, like they
Hmm.
are genuinely
Uh-huh.
locked in.
And
They're
I mean,
genuinely, their passports have been taken away. They cannot leave. They are slaves. You could kill them and nobody would know. Nobody could do anything.
the
Is
only
that not?
company that really jumps out that I know about is Nike has had that issue in the past. Um, I don't know if they still do. I don't really
It
support
was those
Nike. I don't buy
islands,
Nike.
like off,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
I
But
know
Nike
Walmart.
was not the only one who was doing manufacturing it.
No.
They just happened to be the biggest
Yeah.
named one. And somebody went after them because they were
Uh-huh.
following how Nike was really kind of this awful company, but
Mhm.
projected themselves as being a really good company. Like the woman who used to hit her the manager in Korea that used to hit the workers with the shoes that weren't any good.
Mm.
Yeah, that's yeah. So yeah, pretty much that was it. So they're saying they could have ended it, but they the boycott or the what do they call it here? But they chose to stay with it. But in 1862, Lancaster mill workers, Lancastershire mill
Mhm.
workers, at personal sacrifice took a principled stand by refusing to touch raw cotton picked by U.S. slaves.
I can't even
So they
imagine like
did.
what yeah, what the equivalent today. The courage that that would take to say no, you can go ahead and fire me or whatever, but I'm not going to
Well,
work
and
this. Mhm.
they're basically going to starve too. Without work, they don't have any savings.
Mhm.
They are working hand to mouth. There'll be no jobs. They'll probably get scab labor in to
Mhm.
do it. They know all that. They know all
Mhm.
that. I know. But at some point, you have to ask yourself, if I keep when I'm almost at that level. In
Mhm.
Manchester, they must have felt that they were almost slaves. So
Mhm.
then they thought, if I do not stand up now, if I do not do it now, then they'll just make me a slave.
Mhm.
And then I am a slave again. I'm a serf. I mean, it was like they
Mhm.
didn't know what slavery was in England. Serfdom
Mhm.
was in Europe,
Mhm.
and those were white people being slaves, for other white people. Truly, you couldn't get married without your owner allowing it in
Mhm.
England, in Britain at certain times. So, what they took over in the South, we call it slavery, but it was just serfdom in a different color.
Well, it
Basically,
was chattel slavery. It was definitely worse. it was definitely more
that
brutal
you
and
could kill your serf. You could kill your
yeah,
serf,
um I know, and they did.
and
Uh
they did. And if your serf died, what did you get? You got their
mhm.
most prime, beast, which was now they've lost like the member of the family, so the woman has nothing, and the she has
Mhm.
nothing, and what does she have to give him? The very best that she has.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like, okay, it maybe wasn't quite it, but ooh, at some point in certain places, it was real close.
Mhm. No, sure.
Ireland,
And I think there is just to give them as much credit. It's like they knew, yeah, they had class consciousness, some kind of awareness, thanks to Ingalls, you know, and just
or even just history,
yeah,
their
I
own
mean,
history.
yeah. So that is huge, and I definitely would push for that sort of thing here now because we these days people are so uh, fractured in their thinking and so disconnected from the rest of the world. Nobody sees through the advertising and sees what. I'm guilty of it too. Buying buying cheap crap online. It's like you never know where it's really made, where what these companies are like. Who knows? I think a lot of them are fine, but A lot of them aren't. And it's like, at least back then, it was clear. They knew. There was only one source, so they knew like uh, what it was. Today, it's all.
Well, there was Egyptian cotton too. Is that what
Mm-hmm,
you're talking about? There was Egyptian cotton. There just wasn't as much of it. You know what I
uh,
mean? And it wasn't as good of quality and all this other stuff. And I mean, you sort of have like the same thing you'd have now. You have contracts for your product. Like when you get done at the mill, that piece of cloth is supposed to go to New Zealand.
mm-hmm,
I mean, that's so. I mean, it could have gone to New Zealand then. I think there was New Zealand then. You know what I mean? It could have gone
mm-hmm.
there. Could have gone to Australia. I know Australia was there. You see what I'm saying? So it was
Somewhere.
global in a way, and it was global in a way, but it's in a different way.
Mm-hmm,
That was where that they knew by the ships that came in.
mm-hmm,
By the ship that came in, you knew where it come from, and it had to. You have to do that when you come into port. You have to show your colors, as they say. You have to show your flag, you have to show your passport, you have to show your papers, you have to show the whole thing. That's always been like that. I mean, we think of how we handle our ports today to be so new and modern. There was high security in ports back, like even in Carthage,
mm-hmm,
because their port was so important that someone could get in there like with a boat and burn a boat and take down your whole navy.
mm-hmm,
So port security has always been a big deal. It hasn't been like we think of it now, but
mm-hmm.
having security around your port is, and knowing where things come from, you have to, because this is the logistics. This is how you keep track of it all. This is how people get paid. This is how money is made.
And somehow those workers were able to, you know, stay informed. I don't know if it was just word of
Well,
mouth or
they
somehow
knew. Well,
they
because
knew where these ships were coming from.
that it was because who do you think worked on the docks? The
Mm-hmm,
husbands of these women working in the factories,
mm-hmm.
the fathers of the daughters working in the factories. Do you know what I mean? There were mostly women working in
Ah,
the factories,
see, you didn't say that
not
part yet. I'm glad we got to this point because yeah, that was I wasn't picturing women in those factories exactly.
positions.
Mm-hmm,
Well, sure, it's like anything else. It was a low wage and paid job, and
mm-hmm,
women had no rights in England or
mm-hmm.
really anywhere else, much in Europe, even at that time. They had some. I'll go back on it. I mean, some countries had more than others, but
Well, it
you know,
was their solidarity. The
it was their
women.
solidarity because they realized that if they didn't stand up for them, then that's what I'm saying. How close are you to that? You're pretty close. Do you know what I mean? You're not
Mm-hmm,
that far away. You can see those people and their lives,
mm-hmm,
some of the people in some of the owners of the mills of Manchester. I mean, even after they knew the mills were killing people because of this fine cotton mist that's in the air that gets in your lungs, kind of like asbestos. Okay,
mm-hmm,
would be the, and they died from it. And even after lots and lots of the owners knew, they would do nothing to help that.
mm-hmm,
They didn't care. They were expendable.
mm-hmm.
When your workers become expendable, there's a level as an
That they'll put
employer
up
that you,
with. At
well,
some point,
oh,
they're
you
going
mean
to,
it,
you're going to piss them off too much, and they're going to rise up, do something you don't like.
and that was part of what I was saying. If the owners weren't going to think that the mill workers' lives were worth anything because they knew that they didn't, and they knew that the slaves' lives weren't meant anything to their owners, that is a lot of solidarity there.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Because
we've
if I don't say that your life is worth anything, then how are you going to tell me my life is
mm-hmm,
worth anything?
totally. We
Because
just
they're both
crossed.
telling us that our lives aren't worth anything. Go ahead.
We just crossed an hour.
Sorry. Okay, so we
So
can
maybe
go.
we should wrap it there because I think that we went we went full from from how the amendment was ratified to
Right.
from the legal side to the political side, I guess.
And to how that pressure was put on them. So even the South knew that they had to outlaw slavery because
Mm-hmm.
even after the war, what was Lancastershire going to do?
Yeah, and
Going
that
to do? They weren't
support,
going to take it.
the support from Britain and France never came.
Right.
Yeah, and because of that, I mean, it's so huge. Because yeah, you think like if those workers would have kept producing, or kept whatever you call it, refining that
Manufacturing
cotton.
thread out of the cotton.
Oh hey, hold on, perfect. We got Venom 007 saying freedom for all, MAGA 2020, and MAGA for life. Oh, Venom 007,
Venom.
MAGA 2020. Let me guess. Are you waiting on the Arizona recount? Uh, MAGA for life.
I've decided on a new amendment. I
Okay.
mean, I like the other amendments we brought up that I'd like to get a convention called on. This one is that we can only evolution will be taught in schools.
Okay.
Because I think that you can only teach in school what's based on fact.
Well,
I
I
mean, at
mean, hey,
least
if you
that
want to do
part.
an amendment
At
about
least that.
education, I'm all for that. I mean, my
But
amendment,
that's a way to go. But I think
but
well, you're almost going to need an amendment because now so many states have decided that creationism should be on the whatever. What do they call it? You know
hmm
what I mean. Oh, the in classes. It should be taught. It's on the curriculum. On the curriculum. So you would almost have to pass an
well,
amendment to
let's
not
ask.
allow it.
Let's see if Venom 007 is still there. I don't know if you're still watching, but let me ask you a question. If you could pass an amendment, what would it be? Would it be to get rid of the Electoral College? Would it be, I don't know, would it be to make Trump emperor for life? What what would your if you could pass any amendment, what would it be? I don't know. Wait a couple minutes here to see if you're still there. You probably just in and out. I don't think anybody who's gonna come into a chat and just say MAGA actually cares to have a discussion, but we'll see. Maybe.
Well, they probably think that they're going to get banned because I told you you can see how many places they've been banned in.
Uh huh.
Like how many,
No, I
and
want to.
so a lot.
I want to have conversations
No,
with
I
people who
know you do.
disagree. It's like I would much rather talk to people if they disagree. I shouldn't have laughed. I guess that was mean of me to just dismissively laugh. I mean, come on. I
Well, the
can't take you
name itself is kind of funny.
Venom.
007,
Venom 007, yeah.
wasn't it? It's kind of
Oxymoron.
a funny, yeah. And Venom is more like I thought Venom was the opposite side of Spider-Man.
Yeah, Venom's a bad guy and
Okay,
007
right.
is a
And
good
he's
guy.
yeah.
But
So,
that's their whole
oh,
world is a contradiction. I mean,
007, he's a spy.
yeah.
That's like so different than Venom.
Well, whatever. I
Venom's
mean,
not a spy. He's a super
he's a
evil
super villain, yeah.
villain. That's it. Yeah, thank you. So
Um
anyway,
No, their whole world is a contradiction. Well, it looks like you're not really there,
yeah,
Venom 007. You just wanted to do a
a
drive-by
quick
MAGA
right.
MAGA shout out. Whatever. That's
Yeah,
fine.
that's fine. We didn't like.
You're not banned.
do anything bad to you.
Yeah. I just laughed at you. That's all. But whatever. Anyways, why don't we end it there? It's been real. So keep hope
So we'll
alive.
keep it with the Article 5.
Yes. Getting better. Oh, and I've almost got all the past episodes uploaded to our YouTube channel.
Oh, and this one I'll probably have to give you a code again too, right? I got to remember that.
I don't think we'll need any more codes. No, now that I've got access, we should
Good.
be all set.
Good.
Yeah. That's it. We'll see you next time.
Okay.
Bye.
Yes. Bye.